Hi, everyone. I'm Kelly O'Horo, and this is Adaptable Behavior Explained. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to talk about attachment styles. And the reason why that's so important is because it affects literally every relationship that we ever have and how we move through the world in our connection, our perception of safety, the way that we are vulnerable or the way that we are defensive or defend or avoid our connections, and how much we are willing to trust relationships in the world. And so we're going to talk a little bit about each of the 4 attachment styles and what some of those behaviors and traits might look like and ways to address that if you want to grow into a more healthy, secure attachment. So that's what we're going to be kicking off today. So John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth later did a whole bunch of research on attachment, and they basically determined there's 4 attachment styles. And attachment basically explores patterns of relationships between individuals, and it focuses on the bonds formed between children and their primary caregivers in the earliest years. Attachment styles are patterns of behavior and expectations that people develop in close relationships based on the care that they received or lack thereof during those infancy years and early childhood. So the first attachment style that we all want is secure attachment. And this is described by someone who's generally had caregivers who were responsive, who were consistent, they were emotionally available. So for example, if a child's hurt and they needed care, at the time of the event, there was an attuned caregiver. They were there with empathy, they were there with, they consoled, they were validating. And so as a result, the person feels comfortable both with emotional connection and intimacy and independence. They can tolerate disconnection. Traits that someone with secure attachment tends to exude or exhibit are that they have trust in others, that they have positive expectations about relationships. So they kind of see the glass as half full. They have a more natural, generous assumption that the behaviors of others are not necessarily personal, and they have more tolerance around disconnection. They can form long-term bonds and healthier connection, and they can oftentimes regulate their emotions effectively and tend to be more self-confident. They might be distressed, like children with secure attachment might be distressed with separation from their caregivers, but they warmly welcome back the caregiver when they have eye contact or a hug when the parent or caregiver returns. So the next kind of attachment style is that of anxious or preoccupied attachment. So people with an anxious, preoccupied attachment style often had caregivers who were inconsistently available or inconsistently responsive. So as a result, they might worry about the reliability of someone being there for them. And that shows up in partnerships. So an example of this might be a parent that was gone for work a lot, or when they were home, they were preoccupied with other tasks, or they were on their computer or their phone all the time. And when the child needed them, they couldn't always be relied upon. And sometimes they were supported and validated and given attunement, but then sometimes they weren't. And so it was quite inconsistent. This can also happen in large family systems where the demand on the caregivers is so great because there are so many children. And so it creates traits or behaviors in a person where they might seek constant reassurance. They fear rejection more readily. They personalize behavior. You know, if you don't answer a text or a phone call right away, they're overly dependent on the partner to make sure everything is okay. And they might be really taking things personally if their partner isn't there all the time. So they're insecurely attached to the safety of the relationship. They're also quite sensitive to the changes in relationships and have difficulty trusting that their needs are going to be met consistently. So a child that exhibits a more anxious attachment style might be frightened by separation, but then they continue to display anxious behavior once the caregiver returns. So that quelling of the symptomology of anxiety isn't calmed by the parent returning, because again, it's not necessarily trusting, the child's not trusting that just because they're there, they're going to be paid attention to. They can't really count on it. So some statements that you might hear from someone with a more anxious attachment style might sound like they need constant reassurance that you're not going to leave them. They might ask often, do you really love me? How do I know that you won't change your mind? I feel like I'm not important to you when you don't respond quickly, or that I don't matter. I worry what you're going to think of me if I do this or that. When you don't text or call, I start thinking that something's wrong, or I start dress rehearsing tragedy and really going down the train to the wrong country, that things are not okay and I can't trust that I can count on you. I feel like I have to prove myself worthy of your love and acceptance. Otherwise, you won't want me. I might be afraid of being abandoned or rejected. Or I might feel like I need to be perfect for you to love me, and that my worth is conditional. And so I'm not sure if I can trust that you'll always be there for me. The statements that I just shared with you exhibit an underlying anxiety and insecurity. People with anxious attachment might experience this distrust in the safety of relationships, and then they seek constant validation and reassurance to alleviate their fears of abandonment or rejection. And this can become kind of exhausting for someone in the relationship to have to provide constant reassurance for them. And so that's something that is important for individuals with anxious attachment to communicate openly about their needs, so that their partners can provide support and that their partners understand what's going on inside of them, to help forge and foster a more secure and trusting relationship.